Hey there, this is John, your host of The Breakthrough Creative, where we talk about the art of business and the business of art. Today's special guest is Brian Prairie, who I just had a blast with. He is of Raven Spring Creative. And Brian has a service that is, they're really like a full service production company where they help to craft a story, a visual story for their clients where they film, they edit, they offer photography services, they have some animation services, and we talk about all that as it relates to the actual path that he took to get there, a very windy path, and about resiliency, about hard work, about the power of understanding and seeing reality clearly, as well as the value of criticism before we get into a very, very geeky 10 minutes or so at the end talking about our love of movies. So, without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to myself and Brian. Enjoy. All right. I am thrilled to welcome my buddy Brian Prairie to the podcast. Brian and I met a couple of months ago at the C conference, which is self-employment in the arts. It is an artists slash entrepreneurial conference for artists who are either making a living and want to go deeper or make their business more efficient or the creativity more efficient, or for students who are just contemplating, and everybody in between. And I'd never met Brian before, so it was a real pleasure. He was on a panel that I was helping to lead, and just such a cool guy. And I'm gonna let him introduce himself because he's gonna do a better job than I will in regard to his business and what it is that he does as an entrepreneurial artist.
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure being on this end. An honor to be asked. Thank you. And yeah, it was pretty crazy how we met, and just kind of really kicked it off right away. Uh, our fields are the only similarity I think in our field is creativity, and we kind of just like vibed off of it right away. So I loved that. So yeah, I'm Brian Prairie. My business is Raven Spring Creative. It is a photo, video, and animation production house, I guess, or production facility. We're we're small. It's me and two other people, and we've been doing this since 2012. And we work really with we business to business and doing ads or trading videos. I mean, if it moves on screen, this is what I tell my clients, this is what I tell everybody I meet. If it moves on screen, we can do it. And, whether that is a training video, whether that's a corporate video or an ad you want to put on TV or an ad you want to put on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, we can do that. We've dabbled in all of the things. You wanted to know a little bit about my history as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, I know that you were kind of a graphic designer at the beginning, and
Right.
you've gone to Columbia College in Chicago, and then you've morphed into this
Right.
media company. I guess, is that the right term? Media, a media
Yeah, I would
production,
say,
media
yeah,
production
media
company.
production. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to say that, but I also like to say storyteller as well. Like, and just my medium has changed throughout the years, or
Yeah.
evolved, or expanded as well. So yeah, I'll give you a brief history. Like, I've loved to draw ever since I was a little kid. I still actually have notebooks upon notebooks of just stacks and stacks of drawings of Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes and comic book characters, and then characters that I would design that on my own. I was always drawing, and I never really saw it as anything other than a hobby. Like my I don't want to say my parents didn't dissuade it, or they just were like, oh, this is something Brian does, and I thought that as well. And then I really didn't know that I could do anything with that, because I went through school and I would just do it, and I mean, I would even doodle on my tests, much to the chagrin of my teachers. I would I would always have some kind of doodle in there, and they're like, and they would make a comment or like, I always had to have like my hands had to be busy. I was always doodling something. I was listening, but I was still doodling. So then, I mean, I went through grade school and high school, really just kind of just messing around with it. It didn't really form into anything until college, uh, and and I didn't really know I could do anything like with drawing, with creativity, until I got to college. I was just like, oh, it's just a thing I do. And so I went to a community college to get started, and I basically took all of my gen eds at the beginning because that was just kind of the person I was. Like, and I was like, okay, I want to get all these gen eds out of the way because I want to focus on the art part of it. I want to see, and I want to see if I like it or not. And I did that, and I almost quit college because I was so burnt out on like just the English, the math, and all very very important. I just burnt myself out on that. And then my mom basically was like, Brian, you dumb. Like, I know exactly what you did. You didn't sprinkle in any of the creative stuff, and you did all your stuff at the beginning just to get it out of the way. Like, well, yeah, that's totally what I did. Like, you know me, Mom. This is what I do.
Do
She's
you
like,
eat your vegetables before you go for the bacon?
oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I love vegetables, but yeah, exactly. Uh, and so she's like, give it another try. So like she basically spent that whole summer just trying to get me to go back. And then I'm glad she stuck with it, and I'm glad I stuck with it because the following year I basically enrolled into the fine arts program at the college. It was Kankakee Community College. I'm from Kankakee, and um, I found my people. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, these are the people I want to be around. It was there were painters, there were illustrators, there were drawers, and in all sorts of medium. I was just a pencil, maybe pen. I would always just kind of sketch. I had never done anything with paint. I had never done anything with any other medium, and it was really fun just to dive into that whole world of fine art. So found my people, went through KCC, and I was like, okay, that's a 2-year program. Like, now what? Now what do I do? So I went. I think I didn't really go to too many schools. I went to Columbia and fell in love with their program right away. I visited a few of the programs, a few of the art programs, but then there was the animation program, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, oh, I can draw and see it come to life as well. All right, yeah, awesome. Let's do that. So, and to date myself, that was kind of like the cusp of like 3D animation was like becoming really like Toy Story had been out maybe for a year or two or something like that. So like 3D animation was just like exploding. So I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to be a part of this program. Again, kind of, went through it and fell in love. I found my people again. And, but what I also really terrified me is the technology part of it. I was a traditional pen and paper kind of guy. And then throughout my classes at KCC, brush, canvas, stuff like that, I didn't do any digital anything. I actually loathed computers just because I didn't understand them, and I just didn't see it as what it could be. And then I got to college, and like that's basically all I was using was a computer, and that kind of like it made me a little apprehensive. But
Why did it make you apprehensive?
because I didn't see it as a tool, I saw it as just something to fear. Like it was just it was this thing that I didn't know how to use, like a pen or pencil or a paintbrush. Like
Yeah.
once I figured out, like, oh, this is just a tool to like create a 3D object or to paint a matte painting or sketch out a storyboard or something. Once figured out like, oh, this is an artistic tool, not just a numbers machine.
Right.
It can do way more than that. And something I found out too when I went to college with the art background I had, like a lot of my classmates had the computer background, but didn't have the art background. So Whereas they were very skilled in like, oh, they could make a chair or, copy something from life. I could come up with something just that didn't exist. Like it was, I could be imaginative, and they're like, whoa, where'd you come up with that? And I was like, well, I sketched it out first, and then was able to like kind of take it from the page to the computer. And they're like, whoa, that's really cool. So that's where I excelled, was I had the art background. I had that background to kind of help me out with that part of it. And so then what was cool is, I realized for myself, like, oh, the tech stuff is learnable. Like that is something that I can just pick. And that was what was great, is since I was surrounded by these people that knew what they were doing, I was just like, oh, hey, how did you do this? And then they're like, okay, cool. And so it was easy. Once I saw that it was just a skill that I had to kind of get a little bit more comfortable with. Okay, cool, no problem. And then after college, I did some freelance work here and there, pretty steadily, to be honest with you. But I mean, it wasn't steady enough to like be like, oh, cool, I have a full-time job, So I did work part-time at Target after college. I actually worked at Target throughout college and after college, just because I paid the bills. And finally, I was like, man, I really need one. So okay, I guess I gotta transition here to like from the drawing and the animation stuff to the video. So I did I kind of doubled and almost tripled majored in college. I was traditional animation was the drawn animation, 3D animation, which was obviously like the Toy Story kind of stuff where you build it in a 3D modeling program. And then with that core classes, you had to take film classes because it was a film school. So, but also we were making films as well, so we had to like know the kind of the process of filmmaking. So I took a bunch of filmmaking classes as well, and really fell in love with this medium. Like, oh wow, this is awesome! Like this is I can do this, either on the computer or with a camera, and then bring it into the computer and kind of manipulate it in any way. I'm like, neat.
Yeah.
So from there, after college, I was like, okay, cool. I was doing freelance stuff, and then finally, I bought myself a camera because I'm in this process of me being creative and moving forward. I've noticed that I'm always kind of throwing myself, adding a little something else, adding, a little bit more knowledge base there. And camera was the next thing. Like, hey, learn how to use a camera.
If I could stop 1 second and just ask, is that
Sure.
something that you just can do naturally? You push yourself, or is it something that you're intentional about?
It is completely unintentional. Well, I think it's a little bit more intentional now that I know that I'm doing it. As I've kind of told the story now, probably more than a dozen times, just in talking to you and in talking to other people. I kind of realized it too. I go, oh man, I would just throw myself into these situations. I would say yes, and then they're like, okay, how do I figure this out? And I mean, I don't recommend that for everyone. I definitely put myself through some unneeded stress, but it was. I think it was good for me. I think it was good for me to kind of, and I still try to do that even with all of our client work, to try to add just a little something. One, it keeps me interested in the projects, and it also keeps me learning. And I think that as a creative, that's just something I think we just naturally yearn for, is to keep learning, is to keep creating, and to keep rounding out our skill set.
Yeah. So did saying yes to stuff that you didn't have the answer to, did it kill you?
Did it kill me?
Kill you? No, you didn't die, right? You survived it.
I survived it. Yeah, no, it did not kill me. I may have wished that I were dead, but I did not die. Because I mean, I think if you would have asked me during that, I would have been like, oh man, that was so stupid. Why did I say yes to this? But then afterwards, like, oh man, I learned a lot of cool stuff from this.
Yeah.
And that's something. I mean, and that's the balance. Always take some. even my failures, like I always tell everybody, like a failure is only a failure if you didn't learn something from it. And I always try to reflect on like, what did I learn from this? Why did X, Y, or Z not work? And there's usually always an answer, because it's like, oh, I didn't, put enough time into this, or I didn't know enough about that. So I think that is really important to kind of just be able to reflect on that too. And I think that's come with age. I did not always do that in my youth. I would just like basically put my head down and run into the wall until the wall fell down. And then I was like, okay, cool. We're good now. I don't
Boy,
have the patience.
you and I sound so similar in that regard. I just I don't know. I think it's good.
It's good for now until it stops being good.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of out of a necessity, I just didn't know how else to do it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I still tend to do that sometimes, but now I know, I recognize, I'm like, okay, man, don't do this. Just go for a walk, or
Yeah.
get a snack. Do something that doesn't have anything to do with this, because you're gonna throw in 6 hours, and none of those are going to be productive, and that's frustrating, and that's frustrating to me. I think that's frustrating to everybody, but I know myself. I'm like, it's just going to get me down for the rest of the day if I spend all this time and nothing is the show for it.
That's experience and wisdom, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah,
and knowing
totally.
yourself. So that's awesome. I don't know that everybody gets there. I think you get there if you stick with it.
Right,
I think if you don't adapt and learn that, I think that's when people get frustrated and they may just give up and go
right.
do something
Well,
else.
and that's a beast that's ever living. I don't think that ever goes away. Like it gets the beast gets smaller, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of always there. It's kind of always nagging in the back of your head. And I hope that doesn't dissuade anybody from being creative. But I mean, it's always kind of there. But once you get a little bit more confident, once you get a little bit more experience under your belt, it's easier to silence that part of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's be like, oh, no, I can totally do this. And that's why I'm always like, I'll always just say, because if I think about something and then say no, that's why I always just say yes. I'll do it. Yes, I can do
Yeah.
this, because then it's like, okay, now I have to figure it out, because I've put it out into the world. I put it out
Yeah.
to the universe. It has to be done now. So, and again, sometimes to my detriment, but it always, again, I'm alive here. I'm still talking. I'm still here. It's still good.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. Just say yes and figure it out. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously I'm not going to say yes to, I'm going to repave this whole parking lot out here. It's not my wheelhouse or my world.
Right.
But yeah, generally creatively, because there's even stuff in the creative realm where somebody's like, hey, can you 3D render like in I'm not in that space yet. So it's like, no. I can do a 2D render that looks 3D, but
Right.
that's not where I'm going right this
Right.
second.
But you know that now.
Yeah.
You can. Somebody asks you something a little bit out of your wheelhouse. You're like, no, like you. I mean, that's the thing too. Like, know your boundaries.
Right.
When it's like, if it's kind of a maybe no, then it's like, okay, I can do this. If it's a no, like, oh man, I have no knowledge of this whatsoever. Like, it's a no. Like, there's no yesing that at all.
Right.
Because then and then you'll be the guy that just says yes to anything, and you don't want to be that person, because then they'll be like, well, no, he kind of flailed on this project because of he didn't know how to do X, Y, or Z, and you don't want to be that guy. You just know your skill set enough, but also know when you can kind of maybe push that a little further.
That's great advice. I used to be a little bit more of I can do anything. I'll do all this for you. And, I don't know that I had some, I wouldn't call them failures, but they weren't as good as they could have been. And that's just not good for anybody. It's not good
Right.
for you. It's not good for your client. Nobody feels good about it. You're better off sticking to your wheelhouse. Not, again, maybe there are things you can learn and do, but I love that advice. It's good to have boundaries, and it's good to know your limitations.
I think probably the most important lesson I learned is just reflection and self-reflection and reflection on the project, all of the above. Like that is necessary on all levels of life, but especially in the creative process. I was just going to ask you, talking about this, is there work that you look at, past work, you're just like, oh man, and you just shake your head, just like, there's so much that could have been done here. But then also, I when I was early in my career and start looking back at that, I would really get upset by it. Like, it would really upset me. Does that happen to you? Or did it happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a natural experience, right? To look back and go, oh man, I didn't know then what I know now,
Right.
and I couldn't do that. But I tend to look at that stuff more as mile markers and say, it's almost like looking at a picture of yourself in kindergarten and going,
Right.
oh man, I was just a little kid. Why couldn't I be more than a little kid there? Well, no, because that's where you're at.
Right.
That's exactly where you're at.
Right.
So
But
I tend to not be like, it doesn't bring me down to look back at old stuff.
right.
But if so I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, you did, and I'm the same. I'm the same way. Like I said earlier in my career, I would look back and like really bum me out. But now I look back at it, and it's like, okay, cool. Now that I'm better at self-reflecting, it's like, oh, here's what I didn't know then, but here's what I know now to make this better, to make this color pop more, or this composition better. I mean, it's all about knowing knowing what you didn't know, basically.
Yeah. Well, this seems like a natural segue right here into a couple of the topics we were going to talk about. And I want to hear about how what happened with the camera and how you got into the video, but maybe this will lead us into that. And the two topics from our last discussion were our personal discussion. It was resiliency, creatively and in business, and soft skills in working with clients. And what you just talked about, the self-reflection and looking back at old work that really frustrated you, and it sounds like it could have derailed you, and may have in some ways.
It did at times. It would pause, like make me pause creatively and say, like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm a failure. I don't know why I'm doing this. And then, but after you kind of like, once you have the pity party, you can kind of, dial it back to like, okay, I'm not a horrible failure. I can continue. I am pretty good at this, but how can I do this better? Like, what was resonating with me here that really made me cringe, basically, and then it's like, oh, it's these things. Well, I didn't know how to do these things, but now I do after this project. For the next project, I know how to do that better. So it's
interesting because do you think that resiliency is natural for you? Like is that, because we all have the critic in our head, right?
Oh yeah.
And then we have critics in the world.
Right.
Like some of us, it's our parents. Some of it's us. It's our tribe that we hang out with. Some of us, you probably, as soon as I said that, we all imagine that person who's our critic. And then I think that it's more difficult to maybe discern the critic that lives inside of us, because that critic, man, that's a nasty, nasty man or woman.
That's the worst. That's the worst critic you have of all. It's always you.
Yeah.
And I think for the resiliency for me, I think it was not natural. I think it was very like, in reflecting on it now, I think it was very nurture. Like, I would, maybe if you would have asked me back then, I would have said it was natural, but I definitely, if I was going through a rough patch, or if I was going, if something was really bothering me, I would reach out to my wife or to a colleague or to a friend and say, hey, what do you think of this? Like, honest opinion, no strings attached. Just let me know what you think. And then, and they'll, and have those people in your life, and they would tell me, hey, yeah, this is good. Or this, this needs a little work here. This needs a little work here. And you got to be ready for that.
Yeah.
to take, like, you are going to get some criticism. So, and that was something that was tough for me when I first started the business. So that resiliency, I think, was a little more nurtured than I actually realized until I started reflecting on it. Because I had a good crew of people that were like, "Yeah, Brian, you're good at this thing you do. Keep doing it, and we know you can get it up in your head, as we all can. Keep doing that." And I think, and also there was, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of natural in there, but I think it's more pigheadedness on my part, where I'm just like, "No, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to make this work, no matter what." And
Yeah.
I think that's a terrible ego thing. I think that was, I mean, that was in my youth. I'm just like, oh, you know what, and that's the thing. Like, we can go like we can go back to college here a little bit. So I started learning, photo stuff and video stuff with the camera, and because I wanted to learn more about those aspects. I wanted to learn more about the whole production process, and it was to better myself and to have, I always like to call it, have more tools in my
Yeah.
film utility belt. Be the Batman of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And it was that pigheadedness that kind of pushed me through that, but it was also that nurturing, that people were like, oh, hey, this is a good idea. Like, this is something you can keep doing. I always just thought, because after college, I worked freelance for a wedding business for a long time, and shot weddings, and I I I actually had a wedding business on the side for a while. Weddings kind of burnt me out after a while. But what it made me realize again was, and coming back to that resiliency, was I wasn't the best shooter, and then until I actually shot my own weddings and then edited them, like, the 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 owner and the lead editor was like, he would constantly like, why did you shoot this way? Why did you do, like, what? He was constantly challenging me, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? And then finally, it's like, here, you edit this, you edit your wedding. I'm like, all right, cool. So I went back and was like, and then so then I was asking myself, why did I do this? Why was I? What was going on? And so he was right, and it made me 100 times better shooter, that I could now connect those two things. I was like, oh man, this is cool. So I tell everybody, like, if you're a shooter, edit your stuff too. If you're an editor, shoot some stuff to edit. So I think those two things are very, very closely connected. I became a better editor when I was shooting my own stuff, and I became a better shooter when I edited myself. So they're very closely linked. And throughout all of that, I worked at a wedding agency. I ran my own wedding stuff for a little while. I also did
If I may, like right there, that sounds like a college course for you.
Oh,
It's not, it
yeah,
wasn't college, but you go in
it was
and you're
post.
getting perspective on you're getting an overview of the entire project, and you're learning how to take all the ingredients and have them work together to make a really wonderful stew for somebody to enjoy.
Right, and including in that is that same guy that owned that wedding business. He also owned and worked with a small live event company. Like, they would set up the projectors and the screens and the audio for a lot of the Marriotts, I think, in Chicago. Like,
Okay.
they worked really closely with them. So I mean, it would be like, a dentist convention or a doctor's convention, or politicians and stuff like that. But it'd be 5,000 people in the big ballroom, and running a 16 channel mixer board. I didn't know how to do any of that going into it, but he saw that I was a hard worker. He saw that I would just, like, I would always do the dirty job. Like, if he's like, oh, wrap this cable, or go stand out in the sun for, like whatever and film this thing. And, like, I would always be the guy like, yeah, I'll do it. And then through that, he was very open about, like, if I would have a question, he'd be like, oh yeah, you do this, and this with the camera. You can do this and this with the audio. And it's like, because with the live event stuff, I had no idea what I was doing with that. But he actually kind of, like, that was basically a college course too. Like he was just like, hey, if you want to, like, it was like one weekend when it was a big conference. I don't remember what it was for, but it was for, like I said, probably a doctor convention or something. And he's like, you want to help me set up for this? I'm like, yes, please. And he goes, well, it was basically like a weekend internship. He goes, you're not gonna get paid too much, but you're gonna learn a lot. I go, please, yes, let me do that. And then at the time, I'm like, oh, this really doesn't have anything to do with, the other thing that I was doing over here. But then once I started learning it, oh man, like this is totally applicable to creating videos and to creating audio. Like, without good audio, you can't have good video. So this was, again, I was adding to my utility belt without really even knowing it. And I was just kind of exposing myself to these things because, like, oh, I thought this would be cool. And it turned out to be very useful in the long run as well. And then after that, again, this may date me. This kind of takes us to the housing crash, that we had. I don't know how many years ago was that?
2008. It was 12 years ago.
12 years ago. So that takes us to the housing crash, and then the live event stuff really dried up. Like nobody was really doing any big live events anymore. They got a lot smaller, so they needed less people to work for them. That was around the time where I was kind of getting burned out with the wedding video stuff. So I was looking for something else in the reign of like what I could do. And I found a small ad agency that needed an editor, a part-time editor. So I replied to, I think it was a Craigslist ad, which was kind of sketchy to me at first, to be honest with you. But I talked to the guy on, I think, a Friday, and then on a Thursday. We interviewed again on Friday, like just over the phone. Monday, I was working at the ad agency, and it was freelance. It was contract stuff at first, and then turned into a full-time gig. And I worked there for about 4 years. And what was cool about that again, a lot of learning. They were doing, it was a direct marketing campaign. So it was like, like ShamWow and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But very, they were huge productions. Like we would go to San Diego and LA a lot to shoot in these, like, big lot studio things. And, there would be, 4 cameras and a control room and stuff like that. And again, I knew nothing about any of that stuff, but I was like a sponge. I'm like, again, I knew, I go, if I put my head down and just help these guys and just, connect cables and run cables and stuff like that. And again, they were all very like, oh, hey, this guy he's a hustler. He's going to hustle. He's going to put in the work. Any questions I had for them, they're like, yeah, sure. I'll show you how I did this, or, to adjust, back in the day, like the cameras were on these big pedestals and they had a lot of kind of things going on with it. I'm like, I don't know how to work this. So I'm like, hey, just walk me through this. And, basically there's a few levers here and there, and to pan the camera up and down and to have it roll. Again, just, being open to do a little bit of hard work to get some knowledge. I mean, I'm always a part of that. Like, yeah, you want to teach me something? Cool. Yeah. Let's, like, I'll bust my butt to, get a little bit of knowledge. So I worked there. I worked at the ad agency for, like I said, 4 or 5 years. And finally it was just like, again, it was like, with like the weddings, I was getting burned out. With this, I was getting kind of burned out. We were getting more and more projects, but also it just was kind of bogging the whole team down that was working there. It just because we kept getting more and more projects, and we were salary, so we were just like, this kind of sucks. Like we're not, we're working more hours, but making less. Finally, me and the other editor was like, we could probably do this on our own. Like we know enough about the production world that we can do this. So we decided to start our own thing. Raven Spring Creative was born from that. We knew nothing about business, and we were smart dudes. We were like, okay, let's read a lot of books. So we read a lot of books, and we tapped into the SBA educational part of it as well, and they were very helpful. But until you really run a business, there's a lot of business things that you don't think of. There's so many things that you don't think of. And one thing that always that I laugh at now, it's like a business license. Like my second year in business, I was like, wait, you gotta pay for this again? Like I have to get a business license every year? and nobody ever told me that. So it was just these little things that I didn't know anything about. But again, trial by fire, we jumped into it with literally no clients, and just kind of on a hope and a prayer that this would work out. And I mean, the first few years were pretty sparse and pretty rough. And through those first few years, I had a business partner, and he was just like, "Yeah, I don't think this is really what I want to do," which kind of took me kind of aback at first. But as we were doing stuff, it was definitely seen as he was, he wasn't into it as much as I was. I definitely was like, I want this to work. I really have a passion to be able to tell these people stories and to move this thing forward. And so we split ways. He was like, you can have the whole business. And I go, okay, cool. So we signed the papers and made it all cool. And here we are today. I'm the sole owner and operator of Raven Spring Creative, and trying to make this thing grow, even during these very bizarre, unusual times.
So, I mean, everything you just shared it's about, well, it's about a lot of things, but I see resiliency is just threaded throughout it all, because
oh, totally.
If you're going to make a commitment to be a creative, you're already deciding that you've got to be resilient if you're going to stick with it, right? It's this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to be resilient here. And I hear you talking about wanting to learn and wanting to adjust and adapt, and then being the hardest working guy in the room. It's like, what do you want me to do? You want me to lift that and move that over here? I'll do that if that gets me the experience over here. I'm willing to do that.
Right.
And so you're a service guy as well. And it's kind of the school of hard knocks, but it's the school of life too. I mean, it just adds to everything when you know how to do the whole thing.
Right. Well, to back up, not too much, but just kind of overall, I was such a pretentious artist coming out of college, thinking that my talent was, everyone was going to know Brian Prairie was talented and going to hire him. And that was so not true. Not about, I was talented, but no one knew it. No one knew me. No one knew that I existed. So, and that was, I think, especially when I started the business, I thought, oh, my talent's going to, precede itself. Like, no, dumb. No one knows what you do, and no one knows who you are. So why would you even think that? So and I wish I could take that Brian just by the head and be like, that's not true. Like, you need to first you need to network. You need to talk to other people that either know business, because then they can help you with the business, or then two, you need to talk to people that have the needs that you're selling, the services that you're providing. And
talk a little bit more about that.
Yes.
Talk about that, because I ask because I am just amazed at the work of, and I'll just stick with a lane, right, of visual artists. I am like just blown away. You know, I'm a kid of the 70s. We didn't have internet. We had 4 TV channels.
Right.
And if you were the artist at school, you might have been the artist, or there were a couple of other artists. But they're everywhere now, and the work is incredible. And I don't know that I've seen or heard more artists talking about how they can't make a living. That they and it's not that they can't make a living. It's not that they don't have the skills. It's that they haven't yet seen or uncovered or whatever, or gone to the place of going, what do I need to do to apply my skills to somebody else's needs? How can I solve somebody else's problem?
Right. And that, I mean, this is still a struggle for me today. I still have to kind of, sit down and and again, it's constantly changing. But once I did that, once I actually, and to be honest with you, I didn't do that. I actually talked to another business owner, and he was a client of mine. And what was funny is he and it was fun that we had this kind of open relationship. And he says, "Hey, Brian, I'm going to tell you something. It may hurt your feelings." I'm like, "What? Whatever, man. We know each other pretty well, so don't worry about it." So he's like, "Brian, you do a great product. You do an excellent job being creative and telling people stories. But I'm pretty sure you're bad at sales, and your business is probably not being run as well as it could be." And I was like, "Oh my God, are you a fortune teller? Like, what is happening? And I go, "Yes, all of those things." And I go, "How do you know that?" He goes, "You're creative. You that's obvious." He goes, "I can tell that you struggle in that part of it of thinking of what are the needs of other people." And this was a guy who had been in HVAC sales for 30 or 40 years. So he knew sales, that, and it's something like, and we had always talked about this, like business at its bare, when it's boiled down to its bare, they're all very, very similar. Like it's about service. It's about, providing the quality that you say you're going to provide. And that's really it. And once I figured out, like, oh, I just need to talk to my clients more to figure out. And this is the thing, like, once I started looking at everybody as a potential client, and also to back up a little bit, like I thought sales, to me as a pretentious creative, I thought sales was a dirty word, like it was a 4-letter word. Like, oh, yeah. I just didn't. Sales just felt, I was like, I'm not a salesman. I don't want to do sales. Like that's not. I don't. And but once he said, and this same guy said, "Brian, you're selling you. It's just like," he goes, "the only reason why I hired you is because we had a face-to-face conversation, and I really liked how you talked to me, and not, I didn't, and anything that any kind of terms or whatever you threw at me, and I asked a question about, you had an answer for, and you had a clear and concise answer for." And I go, "Oh, well, okay, if that's sales, I can do that. That's nothing. I can talk. I can talk to people about because I love doing it. What I do all the time. I can talk to people about that all the time." So like once he kind of like took the, I guess, I don't know, took the veil off, and made sales a little bit more accessible to me, and put it in a way that was more, I guess, more just I could wrap my head around it better. I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. That is super easy." And then and also it was, again, a little like reflection on, like, what do people need? What do people struggle at? And I mean, people struggle with, I think, getting the word out about their service, or this, that, or the other. And I think you're right. I think creatives are the worst at doing that. Like, they're, as being a creative, that's a tough thing to do. And I think it's because I don't know if it's just where we're at in society, or I think people see a creative as, oh, you can always do this, and it's it's a resource that will always be there. You will never, never dry up. And it's like, no, like, the reason why you're good at what you do is because you draw a ton, you paint a ton, and you've done that for how many years? The reason why I'm good at telling stories visually is because I've been doing it for 12, 15 years, there's a lot there. And even in, college, like, you spend a lot of time honing that craft. And I just think creators are just not good about, like, really accessing the financial part of it, like really tapping into that. I just think it's harder because, you know it's not a widget. It's not, oh, I made a gear or I made it.
Right.
It's like, it's something kind of ethereal. It's out there in the universe, and I think it's hard for them to put a price on that, because a lot of my friends that are creatives, I have a very, very talented ceramicist friend who made this cup, by the way. She is phenomenal, and I requested I requested a yarn bowl for my wife for Christmas, and she's like, "Oh, it'll be this much," and I go, "That's not enough." I was like, I told her, I go, that's not enough. Like, you need to charge me more for that. And I actually did pay more for it. And she goes, "You gave me too much money." I go, "No, I didn't." I go, "I gave you what it was worth." And she goes, "You think so?" I go, "Oh yeah, I know so." Like, it's a good product. It's a unique product. So I just think that, once we try to, like, and I tell my creative friends, value your time, and write down, like, what do you want to make? Like, what do you want to make an hour? And once you break it down, and if you figure out you're making $5 an hour, like, you should really question that, because that's not enough. it's not enough at all. So I think as creatives, we're not. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, we're taught to be creative in college. We're not taught to make money off of it.
Yeah, that's a huge question mark for me with any. I mean, and I would say it's probably that way in other industries too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, your path might be a little clearer if you're going to be an accountant.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm going to go work someplace and I do this, and it's just a little bit more. And I think this is fair to say, it's a little bit more concrete, the idea of where you're going to end up. And creatively,
totally.
it depends what you make and what you do, and who you provide services for. And I think that's where, as creatives, we can get a little bit stuck, is going, because I was a monster kid. I sculpted monsters. I was doing special effects makeup. I was going to be a special effects makeup artist.
Right.
And when I realized I didn't have the love for it, like, I wasn't going to move to LA, and I mean, I loved it, but I wasn't sold out to it.
Right.
It was like, all right, well, now what? Well, I was sold out to drawing and illustrating, and I had this skill set where I understood how things were molded and made, and I fell into toy design and product design, and it was like, it was corporate money, and corporate money is good money. I mean, as an artist, like you can make money doing commissions, but corporate money, corporate commission. And when I say commission, it's not, I don't know how people would really term it, but you get a project from a client,
right?
And they need you to get such and such done to such and such level of quality to communicate to whoever the either sales or manufacturing or whatever. And there's a value there.
Right.
It's like people value it. And it's not that people don't value portrait work, but you better make sure you're selling portraits to the right market if you want to make a living.
Right.
So it's figuring out who's your market, and as opposed to, this is what I do and I'm going to force it down the throat of this market that doesn't pay for it.
Right.
That's a hard one.
No, and you're gonna get burned out. You're gonna get frustrated with that. Like, that's just not. I mean, it's not a sustainable model. I think also too, the creative can think of selling out as as something, again, a dirty word. And I mean, do I do projects for corporate work that I'm not really in love with? Yeah, of course. Like, it's corporate work. Some of it's lawyers are lawyers, you know. I mean,
Right.
it can be kind of boring, but that pays for the other stuff. Like that pays for like you know, I want to, you know, do a short film, so
Yeah.
I can do that. You know, and I think it's important as creatives is to have those things, you know, to keep you going. You know, is all the work going to be your favorite work? No, like it's
Yeah.
not. Like, and I think once you come to terms with that, then it's like, oh, okay, cool. You know, and it's not that the quality of that work is going to be any less. It's just that you may not get as much joy out of that as you would, you know, creating something for yourself, obviously.
Right.
Because I mean, that's something you got to figure out for yourself. That's something that I had to come to terms with, because I was always trying to, like, you know, do, you know, the best and biggest thing for my clients, and so then I was over promising and getting, you know, and not getting paid enough for what, you know, what I was doing, and I was just like, whoa, this, and then I would burn out quicker. Like I was just
Right.
like, oh man, why am I just tired of doing this? And it's because, oh well, it's because you're trying to do far too much for what they wanted, and you got, you know, basically got, I constantly have to kind of reel myself in, because I get excited about it, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and like, whoa, what? This is what here are the things that they paid for. Maybe if you want to dabble in some of these like new skills that you want to learn, cool, that's fine, but don't like like throw yourself into it too far, because then you're just like, you know, oh man, you know, I spent 140 hours on this when I should have only spent 40.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh
Yeah.
man. And well, that's the thing too. Like, so one, you're not making your hourly that you want to make. Two, you've taken time, precious time, away from other projects that you probably should be working on. And that's the biggest thing. That's that,
Yeah.
because that is something you don't ever like. The pay thing kind of sucks, but the time thing, you don't get that back. And
Right.
then you have other clients that are like, hey, where's my thing? You know, where,
Right.
you know, so
Well, and then you've got your wife too,
yeah, and
right?
that too.
It's like
Yeah,
you've got relationship out. You
but
got a
yeah, and
life to
it's,
live.
so you have life outside of that. So you definitely, yeah. So that's super important as well.
Yeah.
Like keeping that, and well, I mean, in being, I mean, I don't want to say freelancer, but being a creative, your hours are
Yeah.
not 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. Like, because that was something when I first started doing this on my own with my wife Ashley, because she's, you know, she works at a bank. She has a 9 to 5 job, and that, you know, she clocks in, she clocks out, the end. Whereas mine's like, you know, sometimes I gotta be to work pretty early. Sometimes I gotta work through lunch. Sometimes I gotta work super late. Um, Sometimes I have to work 14-hour days. Sometimes I
Right.
get to work 6-hour days, or, you know, or I can just take a day off. You know, uh, that was kind of hard for her to grasp, especially when I was working from home, because it'd be like, oh, hey, you're home. Start, you know, you can start dinner, and I'm like, what? Yes, I could. But I mean, so it was a very transitional thing for both of us. Like we
Yeah.
had to kind of know the boundaries of the relationship and work, but and also I was always really bad about keeping the boundaries of work, because it was like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially working from home, you know, my you know, my bedroom and my office are basically, you know, 20 steps, so I could just basically get up out of my pajamas, jump on the computer, and start working,
Yeah.
and that's not a healthy way to work. That was something that I did for a while, and it was horribly unsustainable. Like it just did
Yeah.
not. It was not a good thing for me. Like having that routine, having that, like, get up, you know, brush your teeth, have breakfast, you know, sit and talk to your significant other about not work, you know, about whatever is going to be going on during the day. I mean, this is very poignant for now, because, you know,
Sure.
we're both home together, working from home, and it was a struggle to kind of get back into that again, because I have an office, and I kind of wanted to get an office partially for the fact just to kind of get me out of the house, to, you know, make me feel like going to work was a thing, and that was what I needed. And it was just, we needed more space too for the business. But now, you know, bringing it back home again, was a bit of a struggle. It was a struggle for me just to kind of wrap my head around that, because again, I got into the habit of like, oh, you know what? I'll just walk over to the computer, turn it on, start going, and be like, oh, all of a sudden it's 2:30. I haven't brushed my teeth. I haven't taken a shower. I'm still wearing the pajama pants from the day before. So it's like, okay, this is a bad habit. We need to like not do this.
You have trained for the quarantine.
I have trained for the quarantine.
You didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it, and I don't want to be trained. I want a routine again. I
Right.
like the routine is nice.
I'm with you. So let me kind of come around as we're getting ready to wrap up here. There's just so much good stuff in there that you've shared with us today, and I love your story. I love your journey. I can relate to a lot of it.
I think a lot of us can. Like it's
yeah.
I look at other people's stories, and I mean, we connected right away because of that. And I mean, I think the path of the creative is not. It's all it's always just kind of all over the place, and be okay with that. Like it's okay.
And it's a hard, depending on personality type, it can be more challenging. Depending on your relationships, it can be challenging for those around us, and we need to remember that. But what I really love about your story, and what I hear, and I'm curious as to what you think of this, I hear a guy who sees reality clearly, or who's willing to look and to dive into criticism from others to see what's real and what lands on you, and then you're resilient enough to adjust to it. Like that's pretty cool. How does that strike you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's I think you're right. And whether I know it or not, to be honest with you, I definitely think and that was a struggle for me to be a realist, like, especially for the business, like because I need to be like it, that again,
right.
numbers don't lie. You need to make that work.
But there's a lot of people who don't do that. There's a lot of people who refuse to see reality on the business side, or on the creative side, where they go, everybody's told me I'm really good, so I'm really good.
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, you definitely have to, like, I think again, it comes back to self-reflection. It comes back to you need to be really good about that. Two, you need to be able to take, and I was not a good candidate for this. You need to be able to take criticism and set that aside. It's not a personal attack to you, which I was always like, oh my God, they hate me. I'm a terrible creative. I'm a terrible human being. And it's easy just to spiral down that pity hole. And but I think if you can take that and be like, and just like take a realistic look at what you're creating, and be like, you know what, I could have done better at this, and because globally and philosophically, like, we gotta be better about understanding ourselves and each other, and I think that is a skill that I've honed over the last during all of this time for running the business is understanding what I need and understanding what the clients need, and when conversing, understanding, coming from that point of view of that other person, because if we can't understand each other, then I can't tell their story, and that's important. So I think they might
use you once, and then it's like, oh well, we won't use him again if he can't understand or tell the story.
Right, and I've had multiple clients come back to me, and we're just like, we really love working with you because you take the time and talk to us and walk us through the process, and that's the thing, like, people, your clients don't understand what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I take my clients by the hand, and not to be condescending and not to treat them like they're underneath me, but just like, I know they don't understand the production process. So, if they say like, well, we want to write a script and do storyboards and have this start shooting all within 2 days, and like, we can make that happen, but that's a crazy schedule. Like that's not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So and we have to basically tell them like, here's how we can do that, or here's how is that an absolute must, or can we like maybe stretch this out to a week or something, and that's I think, and maybe that's what I was trying to get to, talking about creatives. Maybe that's what we got to be better at, is understanding how to convey that is
Mm-hmm.
that like you said, like, hey John, I want you to paint a giant tiger for me, and I want it done by tomorrow. And you're gonna be like, well, no, that's not gonna happen, Brian. You have to be like, that's not realistic. One,
Mm-hmm.
and two, it's just not physically possible to make that happen. So, but you have to,
or it's going to be incredibly painful and expensive for somebody,
well,
right?
and it's the thing, like I'm sure everybody's seen that. What is
Yeah,
that?
the three circles.
The Venn diagram. Yeah, it's just like there's cheap, there's good, and there's
fast.
None of those meet in the middle. Like
Pick two, right?
Yeah, it's always pick two. It's like, yeah, and that is so true for working into creative arts. Is that diagram is so true, and
yeah,
something that I try to hold true, because it's like, yeah, you can't have it fast and good. You can't, there's always something that's going to take away if you need to force those things. So, I mean, I've convinced clients to not go with me or move forward with a project because they weren't ready to move. Like, because a lot of times, like my part is calling back to their website or something like that, and and I always do my research. So I'm like, your website is a little dated or could use a little work, and always talk to clients. Don't tell like, oh man, you have a crappy website. I always treat them as you would want to be treated, like with your work. You don't want your work to be like, hey, you have crappy work. So I always like, hey, your website is a little dated. It could use a little bit sprucing up. I don't think you're ready for a video. Like you should focus on these things and some of your social media stuff, and then start doing some video work. And again, that's just for me understanding what their needs are. And just because because I've actually had a client say this to me. I asked them, I go, why do you want to do a video? And they're like, because my competition is. And I go, that is the worst reason to do a video. Like do it because you have something to say. Do it because there's like you're excited about your X, Y, or Z product. Do it because you have like it's going to work within your realm of your branding and all of your other marketing. Don't do it because your competition is doing it, because that's silly.
I love that because I'm seeing mature soft skills at work in that communication, and I'm seeing criticism working in that, because we have to critique our clients and what they're asking us for, right? I mean, however
as they have to critique
it.
you, yeah,
right? Exactly.
It's a back and forth.
Exactly. Somewhere along the way, criticism turned into a bad word,
right?
And so here's my rule of thumb personally with criticism. Criticism from someone who A, is going to hire you, or B, who cares about you and is trying to help you, right? That's criticism that we need to listen to. And criticism means the good and the bad, right? It's like it's supposed to be an objective look at, ideally, I guess, an objective look at what it is, how something or somebody or a service is, right? And it kind of goes back to seeing reality clearly. Now, if I'm in an argument with somebody and they start to criticize me, my value of that criticism is it's gonna be changed a little bit, right? Because they're irritated, maybe they're trying to hurt me, maybe, and so I kind of look at the source of the criticism, and that's where, as we mature in our lives and in ourselves, like our self value, who we are, and somebody is critiquing us, I think wisdom starts to tell us, hopefully, that I'm going to feed this criticism through the machine, and they're trying to hurt me or they don't care about me. And I'm going to let that go. There may be a thread of truth in it, but I'm not going to hold on to all of it. Whereas somebody who loves me or somebody who cares for me and wants to encourage me, I'm going to take that in and really digest it. I'm going to try and metabolize it and see what's true in there.
Right.
And then keep the good stuff and, try to grow through it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, guys, can I share a short story?
Yeah, please.
Right when we started the business, like I said, things were kind of a little, touch and go there, just because we didn't have a whole lot of clients. We had this client. Communication was great with him, and it was a telecommunication client. It was a client that I think lived on the East Coast, and obviously we live in the Midwest. So we were doing some animation work for this client, and it was a good chunk of money for when we were just starting. So it was like, okay, cool. So again, communication was really good. I really got to know the client really well. I would have called the client my friend. Like we talked almost on a daily basis, just to make sure that the other creative process was moving forward. And as we got closer to it, to the due date, basically, other than communication just ceased, 2.5 weeks before that. And I was like, what is going on? I reached out, I sent a couple letters. I even got contacted by somebody else that was connected to the client that was like, hey, yeah, I did a bunch of work for her too. And she didn't get back to me. So I was like, I still to this day have no idea what happened to that client or what happened with that. But I did the work. The work was done. And I was just like, I was leveled. I was completely crushed by that, just because, like I said, I really befriended this client, and I don't regret that at all. I befriend all of my clients. But I basically had to go to my mom and said, Mom, I go, am I a bad judge of people? Am I too trusted? I couldn't figure out. I turned it on me, what did I do wrong? Why did why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Could I have done something better? And she's just like, Brian, there could have been a health reason. There could have been any number of reasons. You can't take this. I took it very personally because I had this close relationship with this client. So, I mean, what I learned from that, it was just, like you said, trust your instinct, trust your gut, use what you know to just kind of learn from that. I mean, I was crushed, one, because it was, monetarily, we were kind of we really needed that money to come in. I was crushed too, that it was a pretty big client. It was going to be a big showing of her product and our video for the product. And it all just kind of came tumbling down. And that's the thing too, is we were very new. And so I wasn't selling a whole lot either. So there wasn't a lot of clients coming in. So everything just kind of toppled down. And that's why I basically had to turn to my mom and just I needed that outside perspective for her. I had many conversations with my wife as well. And just about I basically had to ask him, do you think I'm cut out for this? I was really questioning. I go, am I cut out for this? Do you think I have a talent to do these things? And both of them were just unequivocally, oh yes. And I go, well, you're my mom, you have to say that. You're my wife, you have to say that. But they're like, no, Brian. Once I looked at it, I go, and kind of took their words, at face value, and didn't, took my relationship with them out of it at all. I was like, yeah, you know what? I do have a talent that I can help people tell stories with. I do have a value. I do have a worth. It took me a while to get from there, but I definitely needed that outside perspective to, just that outside stuff to bring me to that point.
It's hard, man. Other people's outside people's junk can impact us.
Oof, and that one did real bad. It was just the perfect storm of badness.
Yeah.
And it was a rough time. And luckily, I have that, I have that tribe. I have I had my wife, I had my mom, I had other friends, uh, basically, rooting for me. Just like, hey man, you're not as bad off as you think you are. You're not a failure. This is just a bump in the road. And you're going to look back at this and maybe you won't laugh, but you're definitely going to be like, okay, well, oh well, and somebody, I think this is a quote, and somebody that I know and close to says this all the time. Like, here's something to reflect on. Look at this thing that's upsetting you, and if it's not going to matter in 5 years, then
Yeah.
don't worry about it. And I look back at that, and that was like 8 years ago now, and it actually made me more resilient, to be honest with you. Like, it's just like, I was like, okay, cool. Well, all right, this didn't work out. How do we make the other ones work out? And it's just don't take it personally. I think that's the best advice I think I can give people, is just don't take the critiques are going to happen, and they need to happen. I actually find that's the thing I miss the most about college is the critiquing process, because that was I didn't realize how valuable that was until I got out of college. Yeah. And then, everybody just says like, oh yeah, your work is good. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. But then once you get those people that, are either haters or just don't understand what you're doing, or your work is actually bad and they're critiquing about it, just like, well, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? So I think critiquing from both sides, being able to take a critique, but also being able to give critique is also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And people are timid to do that, but I think
well, right, because like you said, everybody's put such a negative connotation on that word, and it's not negative. It just is. It's here are my thoughts about here are my truths about your work. It's this, and this. It's not because I hate you. It's not because I have any personal feelings, related to this. It's just, here's what I think about your work, and you have to be able to take yourself out of that, and it's hard, but you do.
Yeah, I think that's your breakthrough creative takeaway. I was going to ask you, what's your biggest tip today, but you just said it. It's like, don't take it personally. If it doesn't matter, if you think it won't matter in 5 years, it doesn't matter now.
Right.
And then, give yourself some grace in the midst of it.
Yeah. Well, I actually just talked to a friend of mine about this too. Celebrate. Like, this is this idea is so foreign to so many people. I think creatives too. Will obsess and just go over the failures. And diametrically opposed to that is the little wins. We never celebrate those. Like, we just don't. And I am horrible about that. I was just talking to a writer friend of mine, and we were both just talking about that. And it's like, oh man, and just, and just little stuff like, oh man, I like this week I had a ton of proposals to write, which was great, by the way. But it's also one of the things I hate to do the most. And I just let them pile up. But I got them all done, and I felt so a relief. I was just like, oh my, and I celebrated, like, I'm gonna go on a bike ride. I'm gonna do something for me now. So I did. So it's celebrating those little victories and making sure you take the time to like kind of really reflect on those, because it's easy. It's so much easier to reflect on the bad, the negative, and the failures than it is to. So I don't know why. Evolutionary. I don't know why that's a thing that's built into us, but it is something we have to constantly keep being reminded about.
Yeah.
Celebrate those small victories.
That's great. All right, I have 2 more questions for you.
Cool.
And one is going to be out of left field, but I think you'll do real well with it. You're a movie guy. What's your top 5 movies?
Ooh, okay. Well, Star Wars, Brazil.
Oh, cool.
I didn't really get into film until I got into film school. Like, I wasn't into movies really until I got into film school. Brazil just spoke to me on so many levels. and I love Terry Gilliam. He's just a masterful storyteller.
Yeah.
I love his work. And in film school, Braveheart really resonated with
Great
me. Like, I
movie.
really loved that movie. And like, I don't know, like an epic. Like I don't mind longer movies. Like I have the attention span for it. And so that brings me to, like, Lord of the Rings. I love.
Oh yeah.
All of the Lord of the Rings. Let's see, how many was that? It's gonna
That's
be
4.
tough. It's gonna be tough for me to narrow it down to 5. I'm trying to think of. I mean, and Blade Runner. I watched that probably when I was in film school. That was just mind-blowingly awesome. Like, it was just like, oh, that's so cool.
That's
and just
so good, right?
Artists, and again, the same writer friend that I was talking about. Like, we were talking about how entertainment and art are intermingled, but some things are just entertainment and not art. And film, I think film is a good blend of those things, and because like Blade Runner just is so beautiful. Like, it's beautiful. Like, I love, and my wife hates this. I love a good shot. Like, just when you see it, I just go, oh my gosh, and she's like, oh, shut up. I just want to watch the movie, And I go, this, but it's so beautiful, and how it's, this is doing this, and and it's like, I know. And she's gotten better with me kind of interrupting that, but she definitely understands my enthusiasm about it a little bit better now. But sometimes it's like, oh, do you know what it took to get that shot? And she's like, no, and I don't care. And I go, okay, I get it. You're here to watch the movie. I'm here. I like to kind of, like, all of it is important to me. So, but yeah, those are my. I mean, my top 5 is a living list, but the one that is always on there is Star Wars. Like, Star Wars Star Wars and Brazil. Like, those like, Brazil was like the first art movie that really I connected with, because I feel like that's more an art film than anything.
It is, and that was back in the day. I mean, many of the movies. Well, I guess the top 2 that you've listed, and Blade Runner included, they were all in camera. Optical effects. There was no digital, there was no, you just didn't have it. But Brazil, I think it was Stetson Studios was the model making company. They made the buildings and all the miniatures, and they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
I mean, sometimes it was a little hokey, but it kind of worked with the film. Like, the film had some hokey bits to it, so it's just like, all right, cool. When you can just kind of get lost in those worlds, that's when I like to judge films by, like, the perfect film. Like, when it has a good story, when it's told really well, when it's acted brilliantly, when it's brilliant cinematography, that to me is just like perfect film. And I feel like, for me, that's me. It's just, that's my opinion. Brazil is that. It's for me, because it just, and it had something to say. Like, it was like everything, and it was made in the 70s.
I think it was 85.
Oh, okay, 85. So it was early, but some of the content, from that still resonates today. Just
1985. It was 1985.
Okay. So it just, just some of the humor, and because it was so sarcastic in some of the things as well, and it just, I don't know. I'm a sarcastic person, so it just resonated really, really well with me.
Well, it's that Python-esque humor, right?
Yes,
and then,
exactly.
And they have,
like, in a sci-fi realm, which really, I was like, sarcasm and sci-fi. I'm like, oh my god, yes.
Sarcasm.
Yes. Oh, he made a new genre.
But I think Monty Python, that troupe, they had a really interesting way of addressing reality with absurdity. They would just come and look at reality and make a statement on it from a complete, bonkers direction. But that's why I think they were successful.
Something very accessible, and then like, take it so far, but it's just like, well, you think it's so far, but it's like, is it so far? Like, because like, that's what I felt Brazil was like, the distant future, but it's like, is it that distant? Like, it's not that far. Like, some of the things you're talking about, it's not that far, and some of the just like the societal things they were talking about wasn't too far-fetched. So yeah,
it's interesting when I look at your list, and I could be wrong, but I mean, those movies are all in my top at least 20. All of those movies, And I would add, like in my top five, I've
I said, what's your top five?
Empire Strikes Back, Jaws. I think Jaws might be a perfect movie.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. You know what? I always, that one always, for some reason, I forget about that one, but it is.
You know what I love about Jaws? It's 3 stories in one movie.
Yes.
It starts out, it's a monster movie.
Right.
Then it turns into a small town community movie. Right. And then it turns into a buddy picture.
Right.
And it's just fascinating. It's 3 very compartmentalized components that just move the story along so well. It's brilliant. It's just,
yeah, agreed.
And then Raiders of the Lost Ark, I have to throw in there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, seriously, like,
right. It's got to be a living list.
There's like, there's like my no duh, and there's like, it's those are in there. But yeah, Raiders of the Lost. Oh man, so good.
And then Braveheart comes on, I have to watch it. I can't go off. And Blade Runner. Have you ever seen the it might have been the 20th anniversary, 20th or 25th anniversary of Blade Runner,
the director's cut?
Yeah, and they have DVDs that go with it that talk. It's the producers, the writers, everybody's talking, and then there's a whole segment on the special effects, which was, I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he had done 2001, and everything. It was just fascinating to see how they did the optical effects, and I mean, it's brilliant.
The practical effects from that time period always I mean, I'm sure it fascinates you because that was your jam.
Yeah.
But it always fascinates me because I come from not really knowing too much about that and knowing more from the computer part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love seeing the practical effects and how well they play with each other. And I love seeing films nowadays when you and I'm a huge watch the credits kind of guy because I'm like, hey, these people work their butts off. Like, we need to watch, we need to see, visually see their names. But I love those movies that you see like, whoa, there's a 3D house. There was a 3D production house attached to this, and I had no idea that there was any 3D production work in this. Like, it's those subtle things that they add to it that I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I think the practical effects from that time period they did so well with what they had to work with. Technology just was so limited.
With their limitations, and that's what makes art oftentimes stellar, is like, if you have limitations, what you can do within those limitations. And so, the scene where Roy Batty goes to the toy maker's house, it's the end, right? It's where he dies on the building. That's the old Bradbury building, I think.
Yes. So
there was a shot above. You're looking from the first floor up to the 3rd or 4th floor or whatever it is, and there's a skylight in there, and they have a blimp passing over it.
Yes.
Well, what they did is they went into the building, and they had a strobe set for the camera to take the exact shot that they were going to take. And so that's a still part. And then they put that still into the optical printer, and they did a cut. They created a matte painting or a matte around it. And they cut out every part of the window that was open. And then that became a part of the frame. And then they shot the model of the blimp going through that. And then they had the lights coming in. And so there's actually diffused lighting. As I understand it, there's diffused lighting passing through into the rest of the frame. And it's just a beautiful shot. It's so gorgeous. And it works.
And it's thinking about all of those layers. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, okay, for this to work, it needs to have this, and this. Mm-hmm. It's like, they thought about that. And it's just like, again, like you said, brilliant filmmaking. And just like, and I think you're right. What is it? Like the lack of creates necessity. Like, you have to, you just got to figure it out. Like, okay, here's what I want to do, and they figured it out. And it's like, oh man. And I love seeing when they figure it out and it just done. And it's always like, you're right. It just done so beautifully because they just had to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Magic on film. Love that stuff.
Yep.
So, dude, thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah.
Where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me personally, Brian T. Prairie, on both of those things. But you can also find Raven Spring Creative, my business, on both of those platforms as well. Just search Raven Spring Creative. And also, we have a website, www.ravenspringcreative.com. You can, we have a blog on there, and we have all of our work on there. A little bit about what we do and who we service. Yeah, so check it out. And if you have any questions, please reach out via the email.
Awesome. I'll have all that contact information in the show notes as well.
Cool.
And dude, thank you for being a great guest, for sharing your story. And
thank you, John.
Yeah, you got it. Can we catch up again sometime? We'll
totally.
There'll be something else we can talk about.
Yeah.
So.
Like I said, I love talking about this, and yeah, I'm sure there's more we can talk about. I mean, we could just do a whole episode on Star Wars.
All right, I'm in. All right, brother.
All right, cool.
Have an awesome day. Thank you.
You too. See you later.
Bye. Man, I really enjoyed that conversation with Brian. I really appreciate his insight, and especially his willingness to work hard to gain wisdom and knowledge. I mean, he built relationships through his hard work and his tenacity and his perseverance, and that paid incredible dividends for him in his career as he learned and grew and matured as an artist. He's also a really resilient guy, and I gotta say, I like his taste in movies. So I'd encourage you, if you have any questions for Brian, you can reach out to him. If you have any need of his services, you can reach out to him. And there we have it. So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Breakthrough Creative. My name is John McDavitt. I'm your host, where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. So go get busy creating, and I hope you can figure out a way to earn some money with what it is you love to do. Have a good one.